what's going on there? Is he close to maybe contributing for you guys this year?
Yeah, he's going to get some reps, a couple different spots this week. But, he's mostly been staying at center, and Seth's obviously been doing a great job there. But yeah, he'll mix in a couple different positions this week.
And is the plan still Donnie at left tackle, and what do you plan on doing at left guard if so?
We're still going to work through it. I'm not going to kind of throw that out there yet. We'll see how the week works. But, see how Zen comes in today, and we'll keep going through it.
Far left, Joe Nugent, WCMH.
How do you work through trying to find out what the new offensive line will be able to do best as you head to Penn State?
Well, we're not going to all of a sudden radically change what we do. We just have to move some things around if Zen can't go, and then continue to do what we've been doing.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North.
Ryan, what did you identify from watching the Nebraska tape in regards to your run game and the ineffectiveness there, and what are you trying to iron out this week?
Well, the biggest thing was obviously the third downs. When you go 1 for 10, you can't keep drives alive. You can't control the game, and that's how it goes. But I think it was a combination of things. I don't think we were always ID'd correctly, and Zen did get beat on a few of them there, but it wasn't just him. There were some other things that were mixed in there, but in Chip, I think we ran it double, twice as much as we threw it in the game, and so we were looking to establish the run. But when you can't convert on the third downs, the third and shorts, then you can't get drives going. You can't wear down defense. So we've got to convert on third down.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, it didn't seem like there were a lot of those kind of like perimeter throws you guys would couple with the run game earlier on in the season in the Nebraska game. Is that just a game plan specific thing to Nebraska, or do you feel like you need to get back to some more of those complementary passes?
Yeah. You try to game plan based on what you're getting that week, and obviously the game plan didn't work very well, so we got to obviously reconsider it.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, James Franklin kind of left it up in the air yesterday about where they'll go with quarterback. Two different guys, two different styles. How do you prepare for two different quarterbacks for a big game when you've got so much else kind of going on as well?
Yeah, we'll prepare for both guys being healthy and ready to go, and they both bring different things to the table, but both are very effective in what they do. So we'll go based on what we've seen and what's on the film. But yeah, we have to know who's in the game.
Given that they've played both, even when Aller is healthy, does that help a little bit because you knew you had to prepare for some change up there?
Yeah, regardless, we knew we were going to have to prepare for both quarterbacks. So, and both do things, they both do, they run, they throw, they both can do things very well. So they're both talented in what they do, just a little bit different in the way that, their skill set's set up. But like you said, we knew we were going to have to prepare for both anyhow.
Over to the far right, Adam King, WBNS.
So we can watch it and we can say the run game's not working, maybe go away from it. But as a coach, what's the conversation like on the headset when you're trying to establish a run game, you're trying to learn in a Nebraska game versus, hey, we've got to get away from this because it's just not working? What's that conversation like?
Well, the number one goal is to move the ball down the field, and so that has to get done. But you also are looking to control the game by running the football and making sure that you're establishing the run and controlling the run and winning the rushing yards. But when you look at it on the sideline, you got to identify what's going on in the game, and if it's an adjustment that needs to be made, or somebody just didn't execute it right, you're not just going to walk away from it. We were explosive when we shot the ball down the field, but that's not always going to happen. We have to make sure that we're establishing runs, we're staying effective, and then again converting on third down, because the more at bats you have during a drive, the better you're going to be. When you're not converting on third down, you're not keeping drives alive. To go 1 for 10, that's just unacceptable. So we're going to keep swinging at it, because we got to make sure that we're doing it the right way and making sure that we're winning the rushing yards, and especially in this game, we got to win the turnover battle, we got to win the rushing yards, got to win the X plays, and so you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what happened in the game, why it didn't get done, and get it fixed.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
What went into the decision that Luke Montgomery ended up being the left guard when you moved Donovan Jackson outside?
Yeah, just based on practice. We have the 1s and 2s, and Luke had been practicing at left guard, for the last couple of weeks, and Austin's, spending time at right guard. So where we were in the game, we felt like Luke had more practice reps under his belt at left guard.
And kind of to what Adam just asked you, obviously, yes, logically you control the game by running the ball. Maybe this is an oversimplification, but can you control the game by just throwing the ball as well? Is that
Like, listen, I mean, we all have to move the ball. So when we're throwing the ball, we're not running it. When we're running it, not throwing it. The bottom line is you got to convert on third down. So we got to do a good job on both sides of the ball in terms of execution. We got to put the players in a better position to be successful, and we got to move the football. That's the bottom line. So we can look at run, pass, this and every. I mean, the bottom line is we got to convert on third down. We got to have a balance of running and throwing, and move the ball down the field and score touchdowns. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So. We can talk to we're blue in the face about running and passing. You want to balance. You got to execute better. That's the bottom line.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Ryan, I know that you guys only had 44 non-kneel down plays. Obviously, third downs go into that. But when you see this action, you see Emeka only have three catches and I think four targets. How do you get him more involved even when your offense seems a little stagnant at times or third down's not
Right. I mean, convert on third down and keep drives going so you get more plays, because we didn't have very many plays. So when you do the math on it and you only have that many plays, the numbers are going to look the way they do. So, we'll always try to figure out ways to get the ball to our best players.
Dan Holt, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, you had said last week you had been spending more time with the defense. Does that change around this week? Do you spend more time with the offense?
Yes.
And you had said with Zen that we'll see how he works through this week. Have you gotten a diagnosis on him? Is there a chance he could play this week?
We'll look at it again today and see where he's at. I think there is a chance, but we'll look at it today and get an update for you later in the week.
Tony Gerben, Buckeye Helmet.
So if Zen can go, is he then your starter at left tackle?
If he could go, he would be, yeah.
And how much of that is trying to come up with the most seamless move rather than maybe the most painful, but perhaps the more, I don't know if it would be better now. Obviously, you're trying to put the best lineup out there.
Yeah, you got to put the best lineup out there and have enough, to not only just win this game, but be able to play the rest of the season. So you got to think of a short-term plan, and then you got to come up with a long-term plan. So, we'll do everything we can to win this game, and that's where the focus is right now.
Don Taveri, WBNS.
What's the mood of your club coming in this week, Coach?
What a unbelievable opportunity right here. I mean, this is a chance to go to Indianapolis is on the line, and our guys are excited about playing in this game. I think the defense got a lot of confidence coming off of last week, the way that they played and creating TFLs and winning the game in the fourth quarter. I thought they were flying around, and so if we can get the offense playing the way it has in the past, combined with the way we played on defense this past week, then that's what we're looking for in this game. But
How about your quarterback after the game? He said that he's been waiting his whole life to play in that stadium, to play in this game. He's got a chip on his shoulder. What do you expect out of him?
yeah, just like everybody else. I mean, for Will, he grew up in Pennsylvania, so I guess that's a little bit different for him. But for everybody else, I mean, again, just like the Oregon game was, this game's been circled on our schedule. We know what's at stake here, so we're gonna have a great week of practice, great energy in practice, and we're gonna go into that environment and go, finish the way that we didn't have an opportunity, or we didn't do 2 weeks ago. And so now we have another opportunity to go do that in this game. So now we got to go finish and win the game in the fourth quarter. We know it's going to take 4 quarters in this game. It always does when you go play in this environment. It's a very difficult environment to play in, but we've been in this situation before. Our guys have been in this situation before. So now it's go time to we'll go win this game and get a top 5 victory. And that's what the guys are focused on right now. The coaching staff, everybody in the building is the focus on winning this game right here.
Austin Ward, the podcast.
Ryan, you mentioned the tackles for loss and finishing the game in the fourth quarter on defense. After that 2-week stretch, how different was Saturday for the defense? What was the evaluation overall there?
I thought we played with more precision. I think we got lined up faster. I thought we played with better pad level. I thought we played faster. Just everything about it was crisper to me than it was certainly in the Oregon game.
Now that that game has been played, what was the one thing you wanted changed the most?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I'm probably not going to get into it right now, but I mean there's a lot of things that came into play, and I'm going to kind of leave those questions right now for in the meeting room, or leave those conversations for in the meeting room. But the bottom line is it's our job to make sure we're putting our guys in the best position to be successful. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but we got to do that as coaches and allow them to play fast, and we got to do that again this week. These guys throw a lot of stuff at you. You got to be able to handle it, and we want to make sure that when the game comes down to the fourth quarter, our guys are able to go play and win the game in the fourth quarter. We've got to be able to do that on offense and defense in this game. It's a coach's job to make sure that happens.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Sticking with the defense, over the last 2 games, there's been a sizable gap between your starting 4 snap count and the guys behind them. Are you comfortable with that, or is that just a matter of those guys need to be on the field, those are your dudes, and they need to play more, or how's that shaking out?
No, I mean, I definitely think we want to rotate guys, but when the game's on a line like that, we got to make sure that we're getting stops. We did that. We'll have to do that again this week. But yeah, I mean, we got to get K-Mac mixed in more, Hero mixed in more, Kenyatta, Caden Curry, and make sure that our guys are fresh in the fourth quarter.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan Jeremiah obviously came in here with high expectations, and he's had a touchdown in every game. As far as him living up to those expectations, what has allowed him to ultimately do that?
Well, his consistency and the way he practices is very very mature again for a young player. And now you're getting into the second half of the season, and sometimes some of those freshmen can start to fray a little bit. That's not the way he's been. I mean, he's been better every week. The way he's practiced, the way he's handling himself and his preparation on a week-to-week basis, taking care of his body, making sure he knows the game plan, getting himself to ready to go play in these games. And I thought for a young player, he handled the environment a couple weeks ago really well. He's going to walk in another environment here, but he'll be ready. That week of preparation right here leading up to the game is going to be critical. But up to this point, that's been excellent. The way he is on the field, he doesn't want to miss reps. He'll stay after practice and make sure that he's running the reps with the quarterbacks to make sure the timing is right with Will. So all those things lead to execution on the field.
If I can follow up earlier on Zen, you said if he can go, he would be the starter at left tackle. What was your evaluation of him on Saturday? And what?
Yeah, I mean, if he can go, we'll continue to evaluate kind of where we're at. I don't think we've made a decision on that yet. We'll have to first see if he can go, and then go from there. So, there was definitely plays in the game where he got beat and he was battling in there, but then once he got injured, that obviously changed things. But he did not grade out a champion in the game. It had some tough plays, that caused some negative plays, but we know what we see in practice, and we got to continue to support him and make sure that he knows that we have confidence in him when he goes in a game.
Stefan Kreisnik, Cleveland.com.
You've talked in the past about going into the season, you didn't need Will Howard to be a superhero. You kind of just needed him to make the plays that were there available. Well, when the offensive line struggles, do you feel like he has a sense of trying to do too much at times, or do you feel comfortable about how he's kind of responded in a situation where maybe the offensive line hasn't been up to par?
No, I don't think he's forcing the action. He had that turnover, which was big in the game, but I feel like for the most part, he's let the game come to him, and we did not do well on third down, and so we got to do that. But that's everybody involved, not just him. But we need him to play well in this game. He's not the only one, but he's got to take care of the football, and like you said, make the routine plays on first, second down, play well on third down, and score touchdowns in the red zone.
Andy Backstrom, Letterman Row.
Yeah, Ryan, is there any status update on Lathan? And then secondly, what was your impression of the way the defense handled his absence with that rotation that we saw?
Yeah, we're excited to get a full week of practice out of Lathan, so we'll kind of see again how the week goes with him. But good to know that we've built some depth back there for Jordan Hancock to move into another position going into last week's game with just a week of preparation. I thought was excellent, and so we do have some flexibility there, moving him around. I thought Lorenzo Styles and Jermaine played well in that game as well, both graded out. So that was good to see because obviously the depth back there was a little bit of a concern, but then Jalen McClain, gave us some quality reps back there. So there was quite a few guys getting reps. So, now we'll go into this game now with Lathan, coming back, kind of figure out what that looks like going into it.
Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
With Tegra and Austin at right guard, how has that been? And have you wanted to see more separation from the two than you have, or have you seen that already?
Yeah, I think they're both, playing solid football, but yeah, we'd like to see them both take the next step.
And on Ardell, what's the word you got from the Big Ten about that targeting call and then taking this?
Yeah, just that, he's able to play in this game, and that they, realize that it should not have been targeting. And, I think a part of that was the fact that, he was ruled a runner. And then if you're ruled a runner, then, it's hard to be defenseless. So, how does that become targeting? And so there was a lot of conversation there. So excited that Arvell is going to be, with the team this week and fired up for him.
Jeremy Birmingham, podcast.
Ryan, most of the offseason and through the summer, there was a ton of talk about how this veteran team, the most veteran team you've had, lots of player-led stuff through the summer. As you've gotten into now November, at least outside looking in, it seems like a lot of the leadership is coming from Will, Caleb, Seth, guys that weren't here in the past. Is that accurate or a fair assessment? And if it isn't, can you give a little insight into which guys that are holdovers are actually leading this team?
Yeah, I think Cody Simon's been excellent. I thought he played one of his better games this past Saturday. I think, you really feel Jack when he's out there. He's strong. I mean, he loves the Buckeyes and just, drives everybody in practice. You feel and hear him a lot. Lathan, not having Lathan there, was, but I thought even on the sideline, Lathan was in it the whole time. So it was good to see him support his team. He's a vocal leader for us there. On offense, like you said, I think Will's really done a good job of that. I think, Mecca as a wide receiver, is a great leader. And I think Seth has really taken on the responsibility of the guys up front. But, when you go 1 for 10 on third down, execution fuels emotion. And, when you're not converting on third downs, it's hard to get in your rhythm going. So I think, the guys were a little bit frustrated on Saturday. So we got to do a better job executing and converting.
If I could just spin off something totally different. As an offensive play caller, when you're looking at your offensive alignment and you see defensive ends and like wide line stuff, how does that change the way you would attack a defense?
Well, yeah, I think every defense has its own, approach to start with. And, sometimes, it's outside, playing defense where you're kind of forcing everything inside, or it's an inside playing defense that's kind of forcing things outside. And just depending on, how that coverage is set up, how the front is set up, it has a different philosophy.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, you said before that if Donovan needs to be the next option to move to left tackle, is that still the plan right now? And how many reps, how often has he gotten reps at left tackle? What would your level of confidence be with him?
Yeah, we've practiced him in the past, knowing that this could be a situation that we may need to go to, and so we'll get him some more this week. And we feel like he's a veteran guy who's played a lot of football, and we'll have to continue to identify the things that, he's going to do well and the things that he's going to, need more and more reps at. But this is a veteran player who's played a lot of football.
Abdul Carter's obviously a really good edge rusher. They've got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
How big a concern is just that matchup, their defensive line against your offensive line?
Yeah, he's excellent. And it's not just him. I think they have a lot of good players on defensive line and on defense in general. So you certainly, got to know where 11 is on the field. He's dynamic as a player. So whether it's run game, pass game, I mean, you got to really do a good job with him. And I think, like you said, there's other guys on that line that are really good as well. So it'll be a challenge for our guys, and so we got to have a great week of preparation. And I think our guys are going to be fired up to play in this game, and I think it's a great challenge for our guys up front coming off of last week. So we're in it now, and we got a lot in the line this week, and so here we go. We got to go win this game.
And we'll wrap things up with Tim May, Letterman Row.
Thanks, Jerry. Brian, just two quickies. Number one, I know you can't talk about it too much, but the concern level of the replay review immediately in the stadium, in the command center at the Big Ten, not finding what was found later when the explanation was done. Where is that, I don't know, in your concern level from the standpoint of there was a fumble on that play and Ohio State got the football? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it doesn't do any good on Tuesday to get, something fixed. So I guess what kind of concern have you voiced about that you can maybe impart?
Well, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of conversation, and it's gone on for quite a while. But it started, most recently, when Denzel had his situation, and we talked about being a little bit more, not being as technical with it. and then we kind of got into this weekend, and seems like, you know, we kind of fell back into that a little bit. So, you know, without getting into the details of all the conversation, you know, it's very difficult to try to coach, you know, these players on what exactly to do in that situation. And so, you know, I think what Arvell did in that situation is about what we'd expect someone to do and react in that moment right there. You know, trying to go win the game with the game on the line, and you know, he keeps, you know, from what I believe, he keeps his head out of the tackle, and so it's frustrating to think, you know, with everything on the line, and you know, you're trying to teach the guys what to do, you know, to be put in that situation is very difficult. Now, I give the league, you know, the league credit. I think the easy thing to do would have been just to, you know, say no, you know, but they did at least stand up and say no. You know, that should not have been targeting in that moment. Yeah, I mean, nobody's more frustrated than me. But I keep going back to the fact that, you know, we have to leave no doubt, and I think that, you know, the way that we finished that game, you know, even though, I mean, that was the worst case scenario. Not only do you get the 15 yards, but it's the completion. So you get the ball where the fumble was, and you get the yardage tacked on. So, but you know what? It was a good challenge for our defense to say, hey, no matter what happens in this game, we didn't get that call. We got to get off the field and go win the game, and we did that. And so, to me, like that's the biggest lesson here. Like, it's going to be the same thing on Saturday. You know, I don't know what's coming, and I'm not, you know, expecting to get a bunch of calls because, you know, it doesn't seem to just happen for us. So we got to go win the game and leave no doubt, and win convincingly. That's the goal. And so coming out of the game, you know, I think for our defense to build confidence, knowing no matter what happens, we got to get a stop. There's nothing we can do about, you know, what the calls are.
And one of the quick, for just an average fan watching that game Saturday, you had two big pass plays, and not until you really needed a touchdown did you get the drive. You know what I mean? And what just came right about that drive, and how frustrated were you and Chip about trying to figure out that, whatever term you want to use, conundrum, puzzle that Nebraska was causing you, and all of a sudden, you know, y'all made it look easy. You know what I mean? Just,
well,
can you explain
first
to
off,
an average fan what kind of happens there?
Yeah, first off, like I said to our team, and I said, you know, what happened the week before with the Nebraska-Indiana game was not going to be the same team that came in here, and they played well, and they have a good team, and Matt does a nice job, and so, you know, it was frustrating. You could see me on the sideline, and, you know, I mean, it was extremely frustrating. And so there's a lot of things that we got to, you know, take from this. But what hasn't happened in some of the other games is when you get to the fourth quarter like that, when you're in the games in the balance like that, you know, you got to go win the game. And that's what happened. We need to put a drive together. We did. We need to get stops. We did. I would love to have seen us, you know, when we got the ball back, finish the game in a 4-minute drill. That didn't happen. So I guess the thing that come out of this game and positive is that, you know, when you get to the fourth quarter, you know, we got to execute and win the game. That's it. The statistics, the score, none of that really matters. Go win the game. And that's the way it's going to be here Saturday at State College.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, you guys got it.